The Hellboy reboot is now just 6 months away, and fans of Mike Mignola's red-skinned, shaved horns-wearing, Hand of Doom-toting half-demon have been eagerly awaiting the movie and gobbling up every available piece of information released about the project. Well, we got ourselves a ton of new information, really our first pieces of information about the movie this past week as the movie began its marketing push, officially debuting a new poster, a new banner, and unveiling its first trailer to a New York Comic-Con crowd, even though it hasn't officially been released yet to the public. While the trailer showed off our first look at Harbour's Hellboy in action, smirking, smoking, and swearing, as he should, Alice Monaghan played by Sarah Lane, Ben Daimio played by Daniel Day Kim, and of course the big bad Queen Nimue played by Mia Jovovich. The trailer and banner confirmed what had been widely reported for months, that the movie is going to be adapting the Wild Hunt storyline, the Storm, and the Fury storylines, which is basically just one big, massive arc that actually ended Mike Mignola's original Hellboy trilogy, in which Hellboy faces off against the Queen of Blood, Nimue, in a basically world-ending, cataclysmic showdown. But hidden in plain sight among all of this was a massive piece of that story, and a major confirmation for the movie, that the sword Excalibur is actually going to be making an appearance. The sword appeared in the first trailer, first with Hellboy approaching the blade in a large cavern, and later at the end with Hellboy with his full horns wielding the sword on fire, which looks like the pose that we see in the first official poster. But we also see Excalibur in that larger banner poster that was released last weekend for NYCC, and in this poster we also see basically everyone else in the movie, Nimue, her minions on the left, and the BPRD to the right, with Hellboy standing front and center, wielding the sword and not on fire, although London definitely is in the background. But why is this such a big deal, and what is Excalibur going to mean for the film? Well, in the comics, Excalibur was essentially what it is in Arthurian myth. It was a magical sword first wielded by King Arthur. In the books, Hellboy, who's actually only a half-demon, is also a descendant of King Arthur on his mother's side, basically descended from him through his son Mordred and Morgan Le Fay. This gives him the ability to draw the sword from the legendary stone and take up his place as the rightful king of Britain, as his ancestor was before him, which is a major part of this story arc. In the comics, Nimue, the Queen of Blood, has risen and raised an army to bring about the end of the world, and using Excalibur, Hellboy raises an army of Britain's noble dead, basically great warriors from throughout its history who fell in battle, to oppose her. But even though he carried the sword very briefly, Hellboy ultimately rejected it and the leadership of the army of the dead. The why of that is a little more complicated though, because you see, Hellboy is basically destined for things. He feels like his life is out of his own control. Originally, he was destined to be the beast of the apocalypse, wearing a crown and wielding a flaming sword, wink wink, and leading the armies of hell and bringing about the apocalypse. But through his lineage from King Arthur, he's also destined to become the King of Britain, leading the army of the noble dead in battle against Nimue or whomever. The text itself seems to imply that by refusing to use Excalibur against Nimue and take up his destined place as the leader of the army of Britain, Hellboy's also rejecting his other demonic destiny, whether it's because he sees them as intertwined or if it's just part of his larger character and personality, basically rejecting and running from the path laid out for him, which seems like it's always been his MO. But what role could the sword play in the film? Well, ultimately it comes down to exactly how much of this large story arc the movie is going to adapt. I think it's obvious that it's not going to be able to adapt all of it, because in the comics the full story of Nimue plays out over the course of 14 issues, separated out into 3 separate miniseries. The first 8 issues in the Wild Hunt arc, then the next 3 in the Storm arc, and the final 3 in the Fury arc. And all 3 of these story arcs are kind of interspersed with little side stories happening in between them as well, so it wasn't even like one continuous 14-issue block. It was actually like 8, and then 3 side stories, and then another 3, and then another couple side stories, and then the final 3 wrapping up the entire series. The Wild Hunt largely dealt with the setup for the next 2 parts. It was basically about Nimue returning to life and power. We got Excalibur established and learned more about how Hellboy's connected to that and King Arthur. Then the Storm saw Hellboy first use the sword, but ultimately reject the sword and his destiny to battle Nimue alone. But Fury, which I said, before, brings it all home, sees a new champion take up Excalibur and lead the army of the British dead, while Hellboy takes on the Queen of Blood himself in a climactic battle. Obviously, it's clear that Nimue is going to be the big bad of the film, and given her background and Excalibur's presence, I wouldn't be surprised if the movie decides to actually lean on that Arthurian myth pretty heavily. I don't see them taking that out of the film at all or watering that down, and I don't think they'd shy away from Hellboy's personal connection to it either. The fact that it appears in the trailer and the first official poster as a flaming sword as well tells me that they actually might be combining his 2 destinies. Maybe somehow Excalibur and Hellboy leading the army of the British dead might be combined with his leading the army of hell in some way, or maybe they're just really kind of simplifying what I talked about earlier, kind of him intertwining these two destinies that he has. Hellboy fans, I want to hear from you guys, though. What do you think about bringing Excalibur into the fold? Are you excited, or is this whole arc with Nimue a little bit too early? Would you prefer that they start with another story first and then work their way back here? Because personally, this is the big end chapter. I'm really interested to see if they do want this as a new franchise, where they're going to go from this movie. That's going to do it for me here, though. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like if you like what you saw, subscribe for more great content every single day, and consider turning on your notifications to be alerted every time we upload a new video. Signing off, this is CJ, and I'll see you next time.